Perfect. So I will send everything to you, the recording, the hands-on, the code, the repo. So don't worry about taking notes. Just more interest and that you learn. So what are gonna do this session? I will explain a little the pros and cons of Next.js. Last session, I told you that Next.js is awesome and it solves a lot of problems for developers, and it's definitely the default now in the React documentation. So the official documentation will tell you that use Next.js, but as everything in the software landscape is a trade-off. So it has some cons, and you will find there people, software engineers, especially that know how to work with React without any framework, that they will tell you that um, it will get messy very quickly. So take everything as as a grain of salt. It's not set in stone that you have to use Next.js, but I will explain you um, some things that are the best practice and how you can make the best of Next.js. Then we will see how to bring data and use the server capacities of Next.js to fetch data. Very straightforward, and we will see there are some different way that Next.js allow us to work with the cache, fetching data, and that's one of the cons that and the best practice of Next.js. So that's super interesting. And then we will work with CSS Modules and Tailwind, um, just to make sure that you know the different way that um, Next.js allow you to work with all of this. With that, let's so let's talk about the pros and cons of Next.js. So you will see that the cons are shorter than the pros, but there are important cons. So there is a learning curve, and especially around the serverless. So Next.js marketing team has focused on promoting that Next.js allow you to work on serverless projects. But that war actually intimidate a lot of people. And they thought that they need to understand way more that they need to do in order to work with Next.js. So the learning curve is important. And it also, it's a super opinionated framework. So you will thought that there is a way of working and you have to follow the syntax, but it is quite the opposite. It allows you to do pretty much whatever you wanted. So some people found that very confusing because, for example, in Python, Django, that is super open, is the opinionated framework for Python, doesn't allow you to do um, free things. You have to follow the syntax and the distribution and the architecture. Next.js doesn't do that. It's quite the opposite. So for people that have experience working with opinionated frameworks, finding some framework that is so free at the same time is a kind of a misconception there. So they will say that it will get messy very quickly because pretty much allow you to do whatever you want. And we will see that, especially with CSS, you can do whatever you wanted. Sometimes software engineers don't need that freedom. Um, but the pros is that it's excellent in performance and it allows you to check and to work with things that were complicated before, like fetching data and the cache of fetching data and how you want to have that experience for the user. And it has made the developer experience way more simple because it has built-ins that are easy to use. Last session we used links. That's a component built in Next.js and it's easy to use. So has made the developer experience way more easy. And that has allowed that the ecosystem around the Next.js is super, it has a great community. So you will see a bunch of libraries that work with Next.js, a bunch of models. People have built inside Next.js, around Next.js, I want to say. So that's definitely a pro. But let's talk about the best practice, especially around server and client components. I told you last session, sorry about that, last session, I told you for default, any component on Next.js is a server component. It's the default of that. But you use client to select which one is a client component. So it will give you some best practice on how to use client components. And one of the best practice is that don't use client component, like use the client components as live in the React tree. You can draw the components of React as a tree, understanding that it's a best practice for React components that each component do just one thing, very similar at functions. So thinking that way, connecting the dots on that way. So your components do only one thing. And that's the reason we have a header and we have a hero and probably another one for navbar and things like that. You want that the client components will be only live. For example, forms or buttons or things that as the user should be at the bottom of your tree. And an important one is a best practice, but it's just a best practice. So if you do this, it will actually work. It shows you a warning that you are doing this, but it doesn't block you for doing. So the best practice is don't import server components inside client components. So if you have to have an authentication section for a form component, create first the out section and then the form component. The form component should be always a leaf. Is that clear? Let me know if I lost you at some point. I can explain this in different ways. And we will see it in the example of the code for today. Let me open the chat. Okay. One of the best practice and is the easy way of identify what is a client component is that if you need to have event handlers or ask something from the user. It means if you need on click, on change, on submit, everything that you are asking something from the user is a client component. That's super transparent. And also if you have control of data that is changing. So if you need to use state because your data will change, is a client component. It's different that the idea of data that is changing. For example, you have a counter, you have a like button, you have a form that should meet the user. information, all of that are client components because the data will change. But now you can fetch data in server components. But thinking about that fetch data is data that it will not change for the user interaction. For example, you are bringing the news. Um, the user will not do anything with that data. It's just reading the news. So that is a server data. So it's a server component. So it's one of this also a trade-off now in Next.js is that you need to think about what is doing in your component and and make a decision if that component is a server component or a client component. And some people will complain about this because in the old React you didn't have to think about this architecture before creating your components. Everything is a trade-off. Now let's jump in the code because this session will be a lot of coding and there is a lot of things that I want to explain to all of you. So this is the code that we have from the last session. We are creating a blog. So my original page is just welcome to my mini blog. Let me run this. I can't do npm run dev because I have that script here in my dev. I'm running this with JavaScript. So I can see it now on localhost. And here are my mini blog, and I can go to post, and it showed me. Now the first thing that I want to do is little navbar because I'm very tired, and that will allow me to explain all of you around the CSS different practice that this. So the first thing that I want to explain to you is different ways that you can use CSS here on Next.js. It allows you to do several different ways of implementation, and it's kind of up to you to choose one. I suggest a combination of two of them, that is having a global CSS for all of you, for all of the component, for all the components and all the but at the same time have individual modules CSS are called here. So let's start with creating a component that is called navbar. Because it's a component that I will use in the whole project, I don't need to create like a specific module for a component. It will go to the component folders like the like button. So let's create here a new file and let's call it navbar. Yes. Let's do an let's do the initial, but let's change all of this because, well, I have home, but I don't have an about. Let's do blog. And let's do a subscribe that we will make it work. So what I can do here very quickly is add reference. So if I do href, it will show me the correct links, and that's it. This will work. No CSS here, as you can see it. I haven't put anything. Um, so let's do that. Let's change and create some styles here. Um, let's say that the navbar is inside the header. Um, so we move everything to be wrapped around header. And let's say that there is a class name for this one. But let's create the class way. Let's do site header is a good name. And then the nav inside we will have class name also, site nav. Let's do site nav container, exactly. And then the UL, let's do the class name here, links. And I will create all of this in the global CSS. So yeah, let's create first a link here, but it will not be a link. It will be an a tag, a tag. Let's do a class name for this one too. Let's put it brand. Are you complain? Well, yeah, what I want. Tell you that you should use link because you are in Next and it's faster. But I want to show you the link with a tag first. So we will create this, and to make it, let's create a class. Oh no. Let's see if it how it does to work this. So now that I have this component, I have to export it. I have to use it. It's very similar how to having a function. You create the function and then you have to call it. With the components is the same idea. You create the component, but now you have to call it. So let's call it here on the layout, because I'm saying that the navbar is inside a header. So I'm thinking that the navbar will be wrapped on the whole app. So the first thing is that I need to import it, sorry. So it will tell you, it will help you for where. Because it's a navbar, I want to involve the whole class here with the navbar. And I think this will work, and I can see this, and as soon as I put it here, yes, here is my navbar. I create a double. Yes, I have two homes. Now, to make this work, let's put it inside a tag tool. So this will convert this li in links. So it will complain that I'm using attacks and not um, links, but it will work. Now if the home is a link, the blog is a link, and of course the subscribe, it will give me a 404 because I haven't created this form, but that's kind of expected. Um, it's not blog, it's post. So let me convert this to post. See it? And I see now. Now doesn't have any CSS because I'm just creating the the components, but I can use very quickly CSS in the global CSS because I create classes for all of these. So if you go to your global CSS and use classes, how you used to do classes here. For example, let's do a class and let's do color. Maybe it will recognize this, and now it's a fault and it's not readable. So let's do read. Yes. Now I can see it. So now it recognize every single A tag for what it is, and it changes the styles very quickly. Can you think a problem about this? I think that it will get complicated very quickly. The problem is that it will recognize all of the E tags as part of this style. So if you have a tag in another component because you are creating this in the global CSS, very quickly you will realize that it affects everything in your app. And sometimes you want CSS that is specific for an ad bar. Now sometimes you don't. Like it really is software, because here you can put CSS behavior like hovers, like clicks, like all of that behavior that is very particular to CSS components. You can put it here, and then you make sure that all your buttons work the same way. You know, there is a trade-off of wanting that all your buttons, for example, have a hover and it works in all the app the same way. But there is also a trade-off of saying, I want this button very particular, and now I cannot manipulate the CSS because it's affecting the whole component. So it's a trade-off. Let's see what it does if I read. Well, it make it better. definitely. But you see how affecting not only this navbar, but also here, because this is also a link. So when you use the global CSS, it really is global. And that's the reason some developers think it could get complicated very quickly. But this is the space. Look what I'm doing here with the brand class that I'm using here in the navbar here in my class brand from the home, is that CSS is a language, and as a language, a full computer language, it has variables. So you can create variables and use it here in the. So let's create the brand. Let's see what I can do. What is a good brand? Reference. So how you create variables? You have to put the variables here in the root. It is mandatory. Otherwise, you will not recognize variables in CSS. But if you see how it's giving you two, so if you want to create another one, you just create another one, the brand here. Let's change this to, there is a orange that I like very much. In 1 second. And we can use a real color here. Let's open Photoshop very quickly. Now let's use this one. And then I can change it here. Let's use search. Okay. So now my home will have that. See? Because I'm using the brand variable in CSS, which is a nice way of have everything like organized or in the correct order. Questions so far? So the global CSS is definitely useful. You should use it for things like brand identity from your colors of all from the behavior of your links of your the behavior of your links of your bottoms, things like the background color, all of that are important to use on the CSS. But imagine that you want to create the link bottom. You want a specific CSS component for this like button because it is important for you, and you will use it to all the app, and you don't want to mess up with that with any other component or things like that. So original, you can create here a class name and put it bottom or like bottom and use it in the global. But let me show you another way. So another way of doing this is creating a CSS module specific for the scope of the component that you want to use. How you do that? You have to create the CSS module in the same folder where your component is. So conveniently enough, this like button is here in components. So what I will do is create a new file and call it is do like bottom dash dot module dot CSS. And that immediately tell Visual Studio Code that you are creating a CSS file. And let's do here a simple class with like button. Let's do this one, but another color. Let's play with shades of red. This is very particular. Pink. Let's do purple. That one. Let's do padding. Mm, I give it this one is more. You have more details. And again, I will give you all of this code later, so don't worry. A lot of CSS is recognizing what you like it. And now, the important thing is that you can also have behavior here in the model. So you can also say, let's change this, and when it change, let's move it to blue. But how I use these models? Well, you import it inside the component. So now inside the component, you will see here import styles for the bottom. And then how you use it is that you, in the class name, you call styles because you are importing these as styles and the class that you give. And with this one, if we see in the post, the likes are now what I wanted. And this is how you make very specific CSS component for a component that you want for some particular reason, a very specific behavior. Is that clear? Have I lost you in any part of the process? Let me know and I can explain again. Now, another thing that we can use in talking about CSS on Next.js is we can use Tailwind, which is a library, very popular library that works with pretty much, I think, works with pretty much all code because I have used Tailwind with HTML. Tailwind is very popular because it solves the problem of naming your classes. All of you that have been naming variables and naming files and naming classes knows that naming things is actually very complicated when your project start growing exponential, and then sometimes it's easy, like, okay, this is the like button, I will call it that way. But if you had several buttons, if you have several components, it could get complicated very quickly. And Tailwind will eliminate that problem for you. Like eliminate. You don't need to name anything anymore. Now, it comes with a trade-off, and is that you have to um, install Tailwind. So I will give you the official documentation because the official documentation on Tailwind is very good also. It is really organized and it tells you everything that you needed. Middling. Put it in the chat. Let me say show you. So it is really well documented, I would say. And the thing that you want to do is this one, because we already did this one last session. We create everything, but you need to install the post CSS official library from them. So let's do this in a new terminal in your main folder. You are going to install. And that immediately change your package JSON and it gives you Tailwind and Tailwind postdocs. And that's the thing that they want. So now you need to change the pod CSS config to add Tailwind. So let's do that. It's basically follow the documentation. It is really well done. So let's copy these plugins. So when you are copy here, is in the post CSS config. So let's see post CSS config. No, here I have the Tailwind. So I don't need to change this one. Let's copy the one that they wanted just to make sure that I'm following. And then the other thing that you need to do is in the global CSS for Tailwind, which is something that is already happening if I'm global CSS important. Well, that's it. Now you can use Tailwind. How you can use Tailwind in a component? You need to go to your component. Let's go to post, for example. And it will give you here. So you use it as a class name, but instead of doing here a name of a class, you use all the things that you want to put there. It's basically eliminate the class, and now you have to put instead all the things that you want to do. At the beginning, there is a learning curve because you don't know the things that you want to do. And it's like, well, how I can know? But as everything with practice, you will start recognizing the things that you want to do on a link, for example. So here, for example, I want that this will be inline. Let's do a gap of 2. Let's do let's do all of this. Um, and now the link inside each one of the posts will have this, all these characteristics. So if I go to my local, you will see it here. It's basically these links. Um, Still not quite sure about the color. Um, let's do font large. Color, no, background. How do another reason you check the documentation all the time, because sometimes you forget how you name the things. But it's here in the documentation. So I speak that it is. Um, let's do sky. Mm, I can't. And now if I go here, I will see the links that I wanted, but it's not catching the text white. And let's do the text medium. Uh, how you check that is grabbing one of the CSS rules that you are creating. You inspect that in the dev tools. I'm changing this one. You see how it gives immediately. Oh no, that's the link. This one is, it shows you here all the, but it's still catching the of the global. This is what I'm telling you, that it could create errors. So if I um unselect the red of the globals, immediately will catch the text white of the tailwind. It's a great example of how, because it allows you to use all the ways of doing CSS, sometimes it brings errors. But it's easy to fix because I can go to the global and comment this one. And now I have something that is similar to what I wanted. Questions so far? You can play with CSS as much as you wanted, as long as you understand that, because there is three different ways of doing CSS on Next.js, it brings some human error to to the equation. Some people find that a very expensive trade-off. In the personal, I like the idea, but it really is up to any software. It's a decision of each one of the software engineers working in a project. Okay, now let's do something interest because we can spend 2 hours playing with CSS, but we still not fetching real data here. We are bringing the data from data. It's not real data. And I want to show you, all of you, how you can create real data and bring real data with server components. And it's very easy because the only thing that you need to do is a fetch. So let's do, instead of import data, let's use real data, but we will bring real data from an open API. So let's do this placeholder. It's basically a open API that allow you to have fake post. And the important thing is that it gives you user ID, titles, and body. So you can simulate to have a blog. It's very useful, this kind of examples that I want to show you. So we were gonna use this one to bring, imagine, real data from the internet. So what we're gonna do is, instead of importing post data, we are gonna do a sync function. So it's a sync function. We don't know the slug, so we don't need the slug. What we are gonna do inside that function is we are gonna create a const that it will be a response, and it's basically, we can call immediately fetch. Well, immediately no, it's a promise, so we are doing fetch, but we can fetch immediately here. This is something new. Let me bring the URL. And more important, we can say here how we want to handle the cache. And first, I want to show you something that Next.js will give you, that is revalidation. So we will say here revalidate every 60 seconds. Now, what I'm doing here, it's an async function because I'm calling fetch, and fetch is a promise. So I need to use the async await syntax. This is not Next.js. This is JavaScript, basic JavaScript. If you are doing fetch, you need to understand that fetch brings a promise, and handling with promise is working with the async await function syntax. This part is just JavaScript. The next, it is Next.js, and it's basically something that built in Next.js now that tells you that bring new data every 60 seconds from this post, but show the user the cache of that data until it is different. And I will show you a diagram of how to handle this one because it's a really important thing. Because, for example, here, that is just um, fake data or even real data of a post. You don't need to have immediately data. So you can use revalidate. But as a trade-off, if you need something, you use cache, and you can do not store um, to do the opposite. So no store is the opposite behavior. Is basically don't cache anything, just show me real data all the time. You can see how if you are creating projects like something with a stock market or a dashboard for a shopping cart or something that the user need to have real data very quickly, you use cache no store. But because we are not in that situation, we are just creating posts, then we can use the revalidated version of this one. Now, this one doesn't give me its ID, it's not a slug. So let's do post ID. It will be ID params. If there is no post, it's not title, is it's title, but it's body. This is because it's I'm bringing real data now, so I have to follow the rules of the API. So it's not content, it's body. It's not a slug, it's ID. Um, what else I need to change? Params. Yes. Uh, Okay, I think this will work. Um, Again, what I'm doing is creating just a regular function. This is just a regular function that is working with fetch. And because it's working with fetch, JavaScript tells me that I need to use the async away syntax. But this is JavaScript. What the part that is next is that is basically telling next that revalidate here. And let's see if it works. So I have was fine is not a function, of course. It's, yes, we cannot do the both about the time. So let me change this return to this one. Inside my slug post. Or not. What is the error? This going on? I'm HTML. Oh, this one is this error in the layout. So it's telling me that but it's not a child. This is the hydratation error that I was telling you that you cannot do a client error inside. It's the same with HTMLs, but it's not here. So I think the error is here and it's making complaining. Check very quickly my function. Because the navbar wasn't an error until I changed here the params of this one. So I think the error is in these params, not in the navbar. And what is making an error of that? Let me double check my code. Let's do first, just see all the links. You see how the error is here when I click in the so let's move this one, the get post, to the page of the all the post. And then, because I creating all the posts, I just want to call it. And for now, let's change this to placeholder. So I will not complain about this one. I'm not doing anything here. That's another thing with Next.js is very, you cannot have variables that you are not using. This is my page inside each one of the posts. But my page here, watching all the post, I want to use it. So here I will do post dot map, and for each one of the posts, one of the links, and each one of the is the PID. The link is the post ID and the post title. Okay. Now let's see if it is go back to home. Go to post. Why I'm still having this the thing is that it's not bringing all the post because I'm here on post. So here in post, I should see this one. That it was the thing that it was important, fake data from before. So yeah, the error is here completely. Let me double check my code a little. Get post with the cache, and if there is an error, give me an error, and then I will. Okay, so where I'm calling blog page. This to fetch. So my error it was that I wasn't calling my component the right way, which is something that could happen. So I'm creating this component that is doing all the fetch, but I wasn't call it, I wasn't linked it, I was linked it. And of course it was giving me an error because you cannot do that. You need to call it. Now we are called at home, the blog page. So this should be work. And there it is. It's calling each one of the titles as the links of each one of the uh, blocks. It was my mistake, but it was a good mistake to make because it showed you that when you are creating a component, the thing that you want to do it is call it. It's very similar to use a function. When you are using a function, then you need to call it, not just because you create the function, you will use it. But now, let's fix this error because I'm creating these things as ID, as the links of each one of the post, and importantly here on post, but here I'm just having a placeholder. Here, I'm just having a placeholder. So let's fix this because at this moment, if I click in one of it's just the placeholder for the post. It's not the real post, and we can use it for the real post. So instead of the placeholder, what we are gonna do is well, we will change this from the slug to the ID because what we are receiving, if you check here, what we are receiving is our IDs. So let's make this consistent and change here the rename to ID. And then inside the page, what we can do is always show the recent information of that post. So we are checking the information for that ID, that specific parameter inside the API that we are calling. And here I'm using force cache because I want to show the user the data always because there will not be new data every single time. And with that, I'm bringing all the information and I'm using very similar to what I did the last session to generate the static params of the URL. But here I'm using ID and converting that to a string because in the URLs there are only strings. And then I will change that to use it as the information for each one of the posts. With that, I think this will work. If I restore here, each one of these ones will give me the information of the post one, and it will show in the URL as the one. This one is the 7, and it shows as the 7. Each one is the 5, the 4, and it shows as the 4. Let's make it work, and it is super easy. You can see now how to bring data using just fetch and bringing data. I have a little extra information for all of you. Let me open that. 1 second. Because it's a diagram to explain the cache now around the difference. In 1 second, because not opening my Adobe. No. Why is not showing? One second, sorry for the delay. Yeah, I will include it in the slides. It's there. The reason I don't understand what is not opening, but it's a diagram that explains the cache way better than I'm telling you right now. There it is. Okay, so here is basically I'm making this bigger. When you now built in Next.js is checking, because every single component is a server component, it checks the cache automatically. So you have now the ability, it's a huge ability of telling Next.js how to handle the cache of the browser independently. So you in the option of the revalidating window, you say cache is valid and bring all this information until there is an update of their information. But the thing is that when it triggers the refetch, it's still showing information to the user. So you will not have that problem where you see just the basic HTML without any data, because it's always showing here the style page that is in the cache. And that is the amazing thing of handle data in the background now with Next.js. And again, I will show you this in the slides and I will send this information, but it is one of the most cool things that Next.js is giving us now. And I really wanted to show you. Sorry about the delay for showing this. But it's basically what we did here with the force cache here. What that is different to the revalidate every 60 seconds here. Two very different performance, but gave the software engineer the control of having that. And that is the amazing thing of handle data now with Next.js. And it was where I want to stop this session. things to understand from this session: the best practice from where to use clients and the pros and cons of using Next.js, how to fetch data, including that if you are fetching data in a component, you need to call that component, not just link it, which was my mistake, and the different way of creating and using CSS modules inside Next.js. And I think this is a great moment to stop. Next session, we will work with forms and how to handle real data from users and put it in something useful like an Airtable very quickly connection. In the next session, we will handle a real database, and in the next session, we will do a deployment, and with that, we will have the whole project finished. How that sounds? Sounds interesting? Cool. Thank you so much for being here. Let's stop here. And thank you so much. And I will send all this information, all the documentation, all the materials. So don't worry. Thank you so much. I will stop the recording.